Welcome, everyone, to the Abington Conservation Commission meeting. Today is April 8th, 2025. The time is 6:32 p.m. First up on the agenda, we have a request for determination of applicability after the fact for construction of a single-family home, shed, and pool project located at 30 McKinley Drive. So this is a really funky one. Nick, do you want to describe?
Yeah.
Because you were contacted by DEP.
So this is from Presidential Estates. Back when the subdivision was done, they had a superseding order of conditions from DEP. Most of the lots weren't closed out. A couple have had partials just for the lot in particular. Came up in a title search, homeowner selling the home. They realized they still had the superseding order on them. They called asking for certificate of compliance from us, further to DEP. They got the partial from DEP. DEP, as a condition of the partial, told them they needed to file an RDA with the commission for the construction of the house, the pool, and the shed on the property. The way it was told to me is it's mostly so going forward, it's clear that anything on the site would need to come before the commission. DEP wanted something on record with the town, with the new homeowner being aware. So,
Did they send you anything, DEP? Do you know who your contact person was there?
DEP, if you look at the certificate of compliance,
Yep,
which is part of this,
yep,
DEP put right in there in the conditions.
Okay.
What I'm saying.
okay, excellent.
And they had a replication area, and Nick and I went out and took a look at it. It looks like nothing has been touched. They haven't built another pool into that area.
Okay,
Yeah, it's an intermittent stream that runs through the property. This fencing before it seems like it's just flowing naturally as it would.
Yeah.
So this is down at the end of,
It's on the
Go down
corner of McKinley and
Yeah.
Presidential.
And then you turn
onto
towards the
McKinley.
end onto
Yeah,
McKinley.
yeah,
It's like the first house on that.
yeah.
Yeah, lot 57, it's only visible in the first map you're seeing. The three maps are kind of showing how the water goes through the property, but
thought it was good.
that lot 57 where it says area 1,
But no significant upgrades or anything like that. It's more just paper process. for
no,
the
if you
trying to
kind of
pass.
see where that stream comes through,
Yeah.
there's a fence not far from there. Everything's been on that lower end of it.
Okay.
You know, on the upper end of that, it's natural wooded wetland.
Yeah. They have a fence around the back,
Yep,
in a regular shape, which probably is going along with how we wanted the wetlands replication to be
yep,
done, or
yep, yep.
I'm not sure exactly how it was done.
Do you have any significant concerns about the site?
No, I mean, honestly, if they try to do a new shed in the same spot they did this one, it probably wouldn't fly today, but, you know, it's
Yeah.
been there a while. It's not on a foundation like that. It's just, you know, comes from crushed stone. It's probably been there 15, 20 years.
Okay.
It's all pretty well established around it.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak about this?
You did a great job. My name's Bob Forbes with Zenith Consulting Engineers, and you just did an excellent job describing exactly what happened out there. Just wanted to add that the house was built in 1990, so there was no filing that was done, and the pool was built in 1998. I don't know why there was
That's so
no
weird.
filing, but I was just a kid at the time, so it was a long time ago. None of us were probably around to ever find out why that was done, but as you mentioned, there's a stream that goes right through the property, and there's no filing required when the.
So in
everything was built.
'98, the pool was installed?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and at the time, they applied for building permit, got it, completed it.
yeah. And I must have
I
signed
don't
that, I
know
must
if
have
there's any-
signed that permit.
Uh-oh.
Well, probably because there was nothing on record, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if I was chairman in '98, I'm just kidding, but,
yeah.
or even if it came to Concom, I don't know.
Yeah,
we get nothing.
yeah. So,
It was a relatively new thing back in the 80s, was when they got the superseding order. The whole Wetlands Act was a new thing at the time, you know?
all right, so we're looking for a motion to approve
For negative
a
determination.
negative determination. I move for a negative determination on 30 McKinley Drive.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Unanimous. Okay,
Thank
great,
you very much,
thank you.
everybody. Have a good night.
All right.
I think we're gonna see more and more of these from years ago that were never closed out, and
I'm actually working on that.
good for you.
Yeah, honestly, almost the entire neighborhood, presidential estates.
Yeah.
I think this is,
The whole neighborhood.
this is only the second or third partial certificate of compliance we've had
Talk to
there,
Paul Spiro.
which is,
Ah, I know.
I gave him a little, I talked to him about it.
Yeah,
I just saw him about a month ago.
And then we have Bernard Circle, which is not on the agenda, I won't talk about it, but that's
Similar,
another.
yeah.
Yep.
yeah,
We're
same
sending
thing.
letters
yeah,
out too.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on.
Moving on. All right, request for determination of applicability to install one utility pole, project located at 60 John Street.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Raditz, wetland scientist with BSC. Have a relatively simple project in front of you tonight outside of the North Abington substation number 99. As mentioned, this is a scope involving the installation of only one utility pole. This is a mid-span, so it is next to another pole, but because of the distribution line on this roadway, we needed an extra pole. So the installation of the pole with associated overhead maintenance is proposed within various resource areas, including the 100-foot buffer to BVW and inland bank, as well as the local 25-foot no disturb and 35-foot no build zone. The inland bank is associated with an intermittent stream which branches off of French Stream but is outside of the riverfront area. All of the work will occur from the paved roadway shoulder of John Street, and the work area is currently a mowed portion of the roadway edge, which used to be dominated mostly by invasive shrubs, including multiflora rose, glossy buckthorn. There's also some invasive vines, including Asiatic bittersweet, and a few small red maple saplings. So currently that area has been mowed and was at the time of the delineation in May of 2024. For this project, it is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.02 2B2H for work within the edge of a paved utility or paved public way. However, the bylaw doesn't have this minor exemption or maintenance exemption, which is why it is filed in front of you. Impacts are limited to 4 square feet of impact from the installation of the pole. This pole will be a direct in-bed installation to 16 feet below ground, or 6 feet below ground. And the only ground disturbance will be with drilling a hole for this pole, placing it in and doing the backfill. BMPs that we are proposing for this include a circle of staked straw wattles. Sediment will be contained as it is drilled out of the hole and backfilled as much as possible, and any sediment that is not able to be backfilled will be removed from the site and disposed of at an appropriate facility. Following all of that work, the grades around that pole will be restored. And I don't assume that any seed will need to be placed because it will be very contained to that pole. But if it is necessary, they can spread some grass seed in this area. That is all of the key information for this project, so I'll turn it over to the commission now with any questions.
How long do you think this project will take?
Oh, a day.
A day? So it'll all be done, cleanup, removal? There won't be anything?
Yep, so I assume that they will come in, they'll drill, they will do the direct embed of the pole. They may need to come back for overhead work, since sometimes those crews aren't necessarily the same. But for the earth disturbance,
Right.
one day, they'll leave the sediment controls in place as long as the commission feels it's necessary. Again, the impact is so contained to just that hole that I imagine there won't be any loose soil, so they could also take up those sediment controls at the end of the week. Or if there's a major rain event, just leave it in place for safekeeping. But yep, one day probably.
Why do they need that pole? Just curious.
Without being an electrical engineer, the term for this pole is a mid-span pole, so the distribution line that comes out of that substation, I guess, the poles nearby weren't sufficient enough to support what's needed. So they needed an additional pole to support the overhead utilities coming out of the substation.
Okay.
Questions from the commission?
I'll ask my question.
Anyone else? All right. Can I get a motion?
Your turn, Gene.
My turn? Okay. I make a motion for a negative determination?
Negative.
Negative determination, yeah.
Right. I have to remember that because it's always backwards from what I think it is. For the installation of one utility pole located at 60 John Street to be completed within a day, da-da-da-da-da.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. It was good to see you again.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda was a discussion on an enforcement order for 900 Adams Street. They have requested to be on the next meeting,
Continue.
so we can
Yeah.
have a vote for a continuance.
I'll make a motion, we continue 900 Adams Street to our next meeting.
Okay,
Second.
all right, and I'm blanking out. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, okay, great. Next one, discussion on enforcement order for 1424, 1428 Bedford Street.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
I have gifts for you. Well, not really gifts.
I'm getting excited.
I know. Like, wait a minute, that consists of bribery. So no. There are no gifts.
This is recorded.
Yeah, yeah.
No gifts, just for the record. I just have handouts for you guys.
Thank you.
You have no gifts.
Thank you.
And I imagine,
Look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Broken that out.
Great.
That's all right, man, I get it.
It's a left-handed thing, I gotta.
and I will, just full disclosure, there is one page that's upside down in there. Somebody else put these together for me, so, let me get my notes here. I'll get situated, tell you who I am, and full
Oh, do you want to just tell the audience when they watch it after the fact?
Oh, okay. All right, so my name is Stephanie Baker. I am a longtime friend of Scott McCaffrey, and I'm here to represent him in this matter. I put together a presentation here I'm hoping that will help clear up just some of the confusion that we've had. I know that Frank spoke at the last meeting, and he was just doing a favor for Scott, just stepping in because he didn't know what to do when he got this order. At first glance, I can see how you would think that this was a project that was of main concern of not taking care of and maintaining the property. But I hope that as we go through these slides here, I'll be able to present to you that it has been maintained over the years. And when Nick came out, we pretty much started immediately remedying some of the things that he, and I think it was Jean and someone else came out.
AJ and Nick.
AJ and,
Yep.
yes, so we're hoping that we can just clear up some facts here. I got some pictures here for you. So if we can just start, once again, thank you, Nick, for helping me get onto this meeting today. I appreciate it. Thank you, chair members, for hearing what I have to say. And we do truly appreciate what you do for our environment, protecting it. I've watched a couple of your meetings just to get familiar with the process, and you guys really are out there to help the community and help the wetlands and environment. Scott is very receptive to resolving this issue within a reasonable manner. He and his family have, over the years, tried to do the right thing for this particular property. They've owned it since, his dad's owned one portion of it since 1976, so he pretty much grew up on this piece of property. So two of the issues were, there's a lot of debris back into what we're gonna call wetlands. I mean, we don't know, we know that it hasn't been surveyed or any of that stuff. So the assumption that there's water back there would make the assumption that it is in fact wetland. So there was some debris in there. And then when you guys were there, a truck came and dumped some stuff into a place that is restricted by Scott and has been told to everyone that is on the lot that it is restricted back in that area. The remedy for this has already started, so I have some pictures going forward that you'll see a lot of the stuff has already been cleared out. And just, and, you know, he also wanted to just make a note that he's actually been picking up trash in this location for over 50 years. When his dad owned it, the garbage and stuff would come off the truck, or the debris would come off the trucks, and it just naturally, because it's in a valley, the wind's gonna blow it underneath that fence all the way to the back of the lot, just like it would if your house was on a main road as well. So on the next page here, this is just some of the newer photos. So you have the photos from Nick when he visited on December 9th, was it? Something like that?
Around there.
Around that timeline, maybe before, and also when he went out there again in January, I believe. So this is some of the photos of those areas that he had taken photos of that have already been cleaned up. So everything along the back of that lot has been cleaned up. There was a tire back there. I was out there last week, Friday. These photos were taken on Friday. I wanted to take photos today, but I couldn't get, I live in Rhode Island, so I couldn't get out here fast enough to make that all happen. But these next couple of pages are just showing you that we are willing to cooperate. We want to get this, resolved, and we want to get it cleaned up, and we've already started working on it. I know that at the last meeting when Frank was speaking to you guys, I don't know who mentioned it about the Jersey barrier thing, or putting up no dumping signs, but one of the thoughts of remedy that I had was there's a keypad out there, and anybody that goes into the lot has to hit the keypad. They have their own code, is to just put a sign right on there just saying no dumping just as they come in, and then maybe something along that back line. He's also willing to do some sort of a stone, kind of not wall, but stone area along the back of that property line so that nobody dumps, and also put a sign. I did look on your website. I did notice that you had a wetlands warning sign, which we'd be happy to put up as well. I'm not sure how that process works. But, those are some things that, in speaking for Scott, those are the things that he thought would be good remedies to that particular issue of somebody going back there and dumping. And I can tell you just by the knowledge that I have of the property, I can tell you just the way it could have gone. Like if he wasn't maintaining it, you'd see a lot much worse in that back area, just like you've heard on the, people putting car axles back there. There's like nothing in that water area that can't be just picked up, except for I did see one tire, but we can get to that. So I'm not quite sure. The one thing I don't know is what the terminology here is to have. Basically, we want to make sure that we are in compliance and the board agrees with us. So whether that's a rescinding of the enforcement order or a negative thing that you just said, whatever that means, we just want to be in compliance. So from a background perspective, just wanted to take you back to 50 years ago when he was a little boy, and he actually had, again, grown up one portion of that property his dad owned, and then they later purchased the other part. And as a child, his mom was a single mom. So as you know, if you're over 50 years old, we didn't have daycare back then. We kind of were our daycare. So he spent a lot of his time with his siblings going through the woods from Bedford Street all the way back to Harris Street. Now, back then, he said he didn't recognize those wetlands, but wetlands guidelines and wetlands descriptions have changed over the last 50 years, as we all know it. And just a little bit of history for himself. About him, he's been a longtime resident of Abington, a person who always wants to do the right thing. He's a merchant, as a merchant marine for 32 years, his job basically has been taking care of the environment. He is a master dive instructor, scuba diver instructor, so he spent his life teaching people about the barrier reefs from Australia to the as close as Massachusetts Bay, just teaching them about the bottom of the sea is what I'm looking for, but I'm not really 100% sure. But yeah, so his job has always been the environment, and he cares very deeply about the environment, and the thought that he's doing something negatively about it is, not something that was an intentional thing, and he's, like I said, willing to work with us and get this resolved, hopefully today if we can. He wanted to also let you know that he wanted to be here in person, but he could not, and he also wanted to call in, maybe Zoom, but we couldn't get that coordinated, so you got me, sorry. So we're gonna go back to, in order to paint the picture that I need to paint here is the basic, continuous and consistent use of the property. So back in 2002, after attending 3 meetings with the Conservation Commission, the McCaffreys were granted permission to take down trees and fill and level out the rear portion of their property. And I'm not gonna butcher Alex's name, so I do apologize. Bezenson.
Close.
Yeah, good. So how do I say it?
Bezanson.
Bezenson. Very good, Bezenson. I'm not going to say it again in here, but I will note that in my mind. So they had a motion to remove the order because initially the complaint was against Scott, which is, so they thought it was against Arthur, which is dad, but it was the Scott, which is the portion that Scott had owned. So they cleared that up. Scott was not present for that. So then it went to the February 12th meeting for the original complaint, which was extensive activity on site of dumping, burying trees, stumps, and filing. DEP was concerned with the asphalt. The key takeaways from that meeting were that his father explained that the primary business was installing driveways. Loom and crushed asphalt was kept separately. The property was used for stockpiling heavy equipment and construction materials, and he stated he was not burying trees. And at the time, I don't think it's really relevant, but the auto body also had been doing some work back there too, so I'm not sure how that was. The findings were that Richard Yardley, and this is all in meeting notes, I have the meeting minutes from these meetings, so if anybody wants to take a look at them, I do have an extra copy. I'm just taking this directly from the meeting notes, okay?
Have we been to the property yet?
Yeah.
Was there a couple times. Last time was in January. Based on the pictures, it looks like it's changed quite a bit since then with what's on the site. None of the fill, I don't think any of the fill has changed.
So that, I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah, but one in particular, there was a lot of vehicles piled right at the very back corner of the site, right adjacent to what looks like the wetland. I saw one picture that looks like they cleared everything out of there, which was a big concern we had. Not seeing any pictures that show a little bit further back where they had some equipment, wood processing and stuff like that. I don't know if that's been moved, removed, anything like that.
So when I get through some of these pictures, you'll see,
Yeah.
like I said, what I'm trying to do is capture a picture of that the property has not changed. At the very least, in the last 15 years, the property has been exactly the same for 15 years and going back even more, but unfortunately, I did the Google Earth search and I couldn't really get very clear photos on that. So I didn't want to put them in the presentation, but really the property has not changed. So at first glance, when you don't know the property, you can say, well, this, moved into here. But it really, if you look at the photos over time, you're going to see that they have not changed.
We do look at photos over time because we use an application, Mass
Called Mass
Mapper.
Mapper, which-
Mass Mapper shows
Which cannot be used as
historically
illegal.
the same thing, but it also, you can call up the rivers and wetlands, and that's what we look at.
Yeah,
Is there a significant encroachment?
Yeah.
yep.
So,
But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the encroachment aspect of it, because that doesn't.
so just to give some background, so everyone understands, I was on the board obviously back then. The rules were different back then.
Correct.
We allowed building a house within 10 feet of the wetlands. So for Dick to say that, you know, it's quite a distance from the wetland, probably was. But as we know, there's a reason wetland flagging is only good for 3 years. And if we're talking 20 years later, the wetlands are moving closer to your property.
Right? Yeah.
So.
I'm not disputing that, yep.
Right. And honestly, I don't remember going out there 25 years ago, to tell you the truth.
2002.
My wife said we did.
Yes.
But I don't remember.
He remembers your wife was there,
Yeah.
yes.
And, you know, we probably said, yeah, there's wetlands out there, and, you know, you can level this off within 10
Correct.
feet, and just
Correct.
don't do any more filling or
Yep.
anything like that. I mean, I'm sure that's what happened, you know?
I'm sure, and wetlands do change, and
Yeah.
that's why we do require every 3 years to have it delineated. But when I was out there initially on the first complaint, in that back part of the property, there was some sort of wood chipping
Correct.
business going on. There was no way that any of that, the wood chips were contained. I mean, they went all the way up to the back of the property. There were also a couple of barrels with some sort of fluids in them. We had no idea what they were.
Well, and honestly, that part, so all of that stuff back in the buffer zone that you're talking about has already been cleaned out, number one. Number two, we can see where the wood pile goes back, because there's 2 trees that are used, they were dead when he started stockpiling them against, and then they don't go behind that. So you'll see 2 trees, that's kind of like the land.
But we also walked up to the very edge of the property where the ice and the water was, and you can actually see what few trees were remaining there. It was buffered way up on the sides of the tree in that back corner.
So that's all been cleaned up, all that area has already
Yeah,
been
but what I'm
cleaned up.
saying is it was filled. It was, obviously, you could see the fill that was there, and it didn't look like it was just, and it was reprocessed asphalt, and it was, yeah, there was.
So if it's
there was,
reprocessed asphalt, it's not gonna go
I'm sorry, it
anywhere.
wasn't reprocessed asphalt, it was concrete.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
correct.
that type of debris.
Correct. So like if you, so as we're going, I have some photos in here that show those pieces of concrete and the explanation for those as well. Those were somebody thought they were doing, again, a person that dumped it and wasn't supposed to dump it. And Scott immediately, so if you want to turn to,
Has the machinery for the wood chipping been moved away from that buffer area, or is it still where it is?
it's still right there. Yeah, so everything, so we haven't moved any of that stuff. And my feelings are, so number one, this, even in 2012, if you go to, so if we don't want to go through all the enforcement stuff and the stuff that, in 2012, you know, we were also, so 2010, if you go to 2010, if you look up in that left corner, you have a compost pile. That's where he had his, he did have the landscaping business and he was composting. So that was the area that he was utilizing for compost. That's in 2010. And then the wood pile, although they have more equipment, more efficient equipment, and this business is seasonal. So right now, what you saw back there was us getting ready for the next season. So the wood chips are, the wood is sold up front, and right now we're in a stockpiling mode, and then it gets bought down throughout the summer season and then fall, and then we have to have it built up for that reason.
I understand, but part of the problem with having a stockpile of wood chips is that with wind and rain and snow, it's still washing into.
So if you look over the edge into the actual water, and I think I don't know if I have some photos in there of this, but I certainly can email that to somebody. There's no wood chips in that water at all. So there's no wood chips behind there. And in respect to the 100-foot buffer, which we all know that that's what it is today, that wasn't the case back there. And just like.
There's been a 100.
It's always been 100.
Oh,
My point was
1973.
that we allowed activity
Okay.
within 10 feet.
Okay.
But within 100 feet was still under our jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay, so you allowed, he was allowed to do business in the way that he did for the past 15 years, 10 to 15 years, right? So, but now you want him to change that business. To me.
Well, let me stop right
Not
there.
necessary change.
When we look at Mass Mapper, not looking at just the wetlands, but the property lines.
Right.
It looks like you guys have encroached onto town
Okay.
land.
But-
So one of the things that we wanted to have you guys do is have that surveyed. We understand that things can be off, but that was one of the things that
Right.
concerned me, is that there could be encroachment onto the town property
Correct.
where there are wetlands.
Correct. Correct.
Which
then
is
we-
something we never looked at back then.
Correct.
So you could have been on town property back then.
Well, we were not on, well, we could have because you guys
could have been.
purchased
We
in
don't know
2000.
because we don't. it
Well,
wasn't-
the property was purchased, originally owned by a resident of Abington, Joseph Christie, I think was his name. And again, he was a friend, he was an acquaintance of the McCaffreys back, he had owned it back a lot longer than that, I just don't remember when he purchased it. But he had owned that property. In 2004, it was sold to the Farm Bureau, and then in 2006, it was turned over to the Abington Town. My point on that is, if the town is going to buy and they bought it for $60,000 from the Farm Bureau, and if the Farm Bureau is part of a government agency, in 2004, they purchased it. So what you're saying is, in 2004, 2006, the town, the government doesn't have to do a survey to see if the property lines, but because there's a complaint, we have to survey. If somebody encroaches on my property, the burden of proof is on me. If somebody builds a fence on my property, I'm the person that needs to go and fight that in court, take them to court, do whatever. So why is it that Mr. McCaffrey would have to do that instead of the town?
I'm not sure you're looking for a court battle.
I mean,
So,
we're looking for a resolution. And the
We got
resolution
to.
is that he's been using that property since well before 2012. Since we went out there, we have permission to do so. We're willing to take steps to protect the wetlands that are back there, but it can't mean changing the business. It can't mean moving the wood chipping business, we can't move that anywhere in the lot. It's just not possible for us to move that, and we shouldn't have to move it.
But you can't be on somebody else's property.
So, again, we don't know that for certain because nobody's done a survey.
Well, a governmental organization is saying, if you look at Mass Mapper, it's saying
Which
that
is
you own
not
property.
what-
And I know
which you've
it's an
said here many times,
approximation.
right?
It is
It's not for
approximation.
legal.
But it is, I don't know, it seems, like, if Alex is gonna go out there, and I'm thinking of, and I could be wrong, listen to me. If I go out there and you're saying, we're doing X, Y, and Z, I'm gonna assume that's your property.
Correct.
Right.
I'm not gonna go out and say,
Correct.
where are your survey lines or
absolutely
anything
correct.
like that.
You're absolutely
So-
correct. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, the town purchased the property in 2004, or at the very least 2004, because I tried to research the Farm Bureau, and I don't know who.
So, just to make it really simple, measure it off from the street. You must have a
But that's-
plot plan to roughly show where it is.
Yes, correct, yes. we
You did
could do
that?
No, I did not do that. We didn't do that. But my point is, technically, because we've been using that well in the 2002 range, technically, which is before the town purchased it, it would prove that we would have adverse possession
That's
of that
not
property.
necessarily true.
But can I just?
Yeah,
If I may,
somebody adverse,
well, I think she's right.
I'm right.
On that one, but,
Yeah,
but the
well-
other thing is, I don't,
I think the town would argue that.
but I would argue that as far as the conservation goes and everything, I'm not gonna speak to that, but I do agree that if we're gonna claim somebody's on our land, the burden of proof's on us. She shouldn't have to go out and hire a
Yeah, but my
land
point
surveyor to
is,
prove our
if
point.
the lot is, 200 feet long, Why not walk it off with the tape and say,
Sure,
okay,
yeah.
we're at 200 feet here, and, you know, this is where all our stuff is. You can do that without a surveyor. I mean, it's not gonna be accurate, but it's gonna give a rough idea.
But aren't we
of
just
where
for
it
the
is.
conservation of the land, though? We're not, where is it in our jurisdiction this approved property lines? That's, and I'm not
Exactly.
trying,
It's not
yeah.
that, but it makes a difference in terms of.
Not as far as conservation, though.
Yeah, because there's.
It does if there's encroachment
Well,
of
the
the
wetlands
wetlands.
here, no matter.
In the
what.
wetlands, I agree, but whether it's town wetlands or their wetlands, it's all the
Exactly,
same.
right.
You
But
should know how many square footage there is on the thing, and you can measure it basically from the street to
Pretty
where it
much,
is.
yeah.
And get a general idea
And
where
that's
it
my
is.
point. You
Yeah.
can get a general idea, okay, so we stop here and we got another 30 feet that we're working in, you know that's probably not your land.
correct.
But you
I
also
understand
can't
what you're
claim
saying.
ignorance of, well, we've had it for 25 years, we've been doing it this way.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it
I'm not
right.
claiming ignorance. I'm not claiming ignorance at all.
So-
I'm claiming that Mr. McCaffrey has been allowed to use that property for the last 20 or even going, I couldn't, again,
Yeah, I
Get
mean,
photos.
this is, the property ownership is not
is not
a
in this board.
conservation issue.
Correct.
The conservation issue is how do we protect the wetlands
Yeah.
going forward?
Correct.
So you're gonna need to hire a wetland scientist, and we're now in the season where they can go out and determine, because it's April 1st, we allow delineations. So you'll need to hire a professional wetland scientist to go in and delineate that property and show where the wetlands are. If wetlands have been buried, then it will go from there.
Well, so here's again, it's not my burden of proof. It's not
Well,
Mr. Caffrey's.
that
It is
is
if
on
you're
you,
doing
that is,
business out
because,
If we have a same use property, it's same use, it's been used in that manner since 2002, and again, going back as our clearest pictures that we could get online was 2010. We've been doing business there the same way.
it
the
doesn't
whole
matter
entire-
business.
It does matter, because if
No,
I
it
was a
doesn't.
single, so what you're saying, based on what you're saying right here, if I pull up a map here, all these people here that have a house abutting the wetlands have to tear down their house.
No, that's not what we're
The
saying.
Wetlands Protection Act went into effect in 1972.
I understand that.
Okay, so if you're referring to the houses built behind there,
Mm-hmm.
they would have had to adhere to a certain policy.
They're right up abutting it, because the wetlands
May I finish,
changed.
may I finish
Yes,
my
of course.
statement?
Yes, of
Okay?
course.
So, I mean, that's as far as the Wetland Protection Act goes.
Mm-hmm.
This is our job to enforce the Wetlands Protection Act.
Mm-hmm.
If in fact that you don't want to do a delineation,
I just don't think it's our
it
responsibility.
is your responsibility because the complaint has been brought to you and you're doing business out there. We're not talking about who owns the land right now, we're talking about who's using it
Okay.
and who's the activity being,
Okay.
affecting it.
So where in your bylaws does it say a complaint on a property? Where does it say in your bylaws that a complaint?
it's DEP, it's the state law.
State law.
It's a state law, it's not a bylaw, it's a state law.
So, okay, but
310 CMR, look it up.
I did look it up.
Okay.
And it doesn't say that you have to delineate your property after you've been using it for a period of time. It's stating new business. It actually states more so that anything you do, if you decide to fill, if you decide to build, if you decide to do anything in that buffer zone, that, at that point, you are responsible for doing delineation. If you've been doing business for all this time and you got permission back in 2012 to do so, you can't go back to every person and say, oh, all of a sudden, the wetlands moved. The wetlands didn't move. If you go back in 2012, they moved. Did he get notification that the wetlands moved? No.
You know what, if you'd like, we could contact DEP
Yeah,
and
that's
get
what I was just
DEP
gonna say.
involved.
You're better off dealing with us than DEP.
And I understand that.
And you
but
know
we-
what,
So-
that may be the way to go.
My suggestion is to get it flagged and find out where the wetlands are. Because if you
But
refuse
that's
to.
a $20,000
No,
cost
it's
that you're gonna
No,
be
it's
putting on
not.
someone.
Nowhere
No,
near
it-
$20,000.
Well, we gotta, so
If
we did
DEP
get
gets involved,
someone-
it could be.
Yeah.
If
we got-
DEP gets involved, yeah, but when you hire a wetland scientist, and we've hired since I've been on since 2021, we've had a lot of properties peer reviewed. I don't think any of them has ever gone over $7,000, and that was for a 15-acre property.
But again, why is the burden of proof on him to prove where the wetlands are?
Because we're saying that you're encroaching on the wetlands now.
That is our
But we've
position
been
as far as
doing the
Conservation
business the
Commission.
same that we've been doing it for 20 years.
We
So
don't
how-
know.
There's a
Look at everybody's
reason why
backyard.
DEP said, so if you built a house there 20 years ago,
Correct.
and you wanted to put an addition on
But
there.
we're not doing anything new.
Can I finish?
Yes, of course, I'm sorry. I'm
You are doing activity out there.
The same activity that we've been doing for the past 15 to 20 years.
Okay. So.
That's my
My
point.
suggestion to you is to hire a wetland scientist and flag along the back line there.
And to what,
Then
That-
that will tell all of us how close you are to the wetland and if you've encroached on them.
but we can't encroach on something that came to us. We didn't go to it, it came to us, because in
It could have
2000.
been
Or,
further away.
or
We
we
don't
can
know.
just turn it over to DEP and let them handle it.
Wetlands can be.
And I'm sure that's not what you want.
Right.
I mean, honestly, we are just trying to find a solution. Delineation is not an option for us, can't afford that.
So what
We
is,
are will-
what is your solution?
So my
Yeah.
solution is, our solution is, we're happy to put, and even if we split that back lot from where the tree trimmer thingy is, split it in half, maybe come in 20 feet from that border of the wetlands, we'll put a
You don't know where
rock
the
wall.
border of the wetlands are
Well,
because
I
it's
mean-
not flagged.
The water, you can
No.
see the water clearly.
Water, so wetlands doesn't necessarily
I
have to be
understand.
standing
Yes,
water,
I
right?
know, it's gotta be certain
That's why
flower
you have
plants
to
and stuff
have
like
a
that.
scientist go out there
I understand
and
that.
figure it out. So
It's certain plants and all that good stuff, right? I
And if
know
it's
all
been
that.
buried,
Nothing's been buried.
what, we don't know that, though. We don't know the extent of it. We have had cases where people have come in, they've done their stuff, and they shouldn't have.
Mhm.
And they'll say, well, we're in business, we've been doing this forever. Doesn't mean that it's right.
Correct.
And if you'd come before us properly, would we have approved it, is the question.
But we did
For
come-
doing that.
we
Well, you
did.
didn't, though.
Yeah, we did.
Right, you didn't have a wetlands delineation done.
We didn't need that back in 2012.
Yes, you did.
Well, then why didn't the board tell us?
1972, ever since 1972, anybody working.
Well, I think her
within 100
point
feet-
is
My
that the
point is, we
board
were here.
at that time allowed them to take down some trees
And didn't say anything about a delineation, didn't say anything about any of that.
because it went on visual. We could
Correct.
see the wetlands there. And like I
Exactly.
said at the time, we allowed activity within 10 feet of the wetland. And we just did a visual there, absolutely.
Yeah.
But now, I'm told that
It's gone
there's
beyond.
trees that are filled 3 or 4 feet up the trunk of the tree.
That's away, that's not close, even close to there.
Well, I didn't go out there, but Jean did, and
I
that's what
did.
she's saying.
It was in the back part of the property where the
Correct.
water was. It was like, I mean, you could
So
see
that-
where the concrete was piled up and piled up and
And
piled
that,
up.
and I mean, I can certainly
And
like
again, I
map
can-
that part out of it.
We can discuss this all night, but I think
I
that,
mean, there's nobody else here, so it's hard.
well, we have other issues on our agenda.
I got you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm trying to be very patient, but I just feel that, you know, as a Conservation Commission, we've been given the authority by the state to review and act on the behalf of the 310 CMR Massachusetts state law with the protections of wetlands and their buffer zone systems. You want to go back and rehash something that was done 15, 20 years ago, and I'm looking at it saying, we're looking at it as of today.
As of today.
And as of
Okay.
today, right now, it is showing that you may be in the wetlands. We are asking you to do a delineation and hire a wetland scientist to do
At a
this.
cost to,
At the cost,
of us. You're
and
not
that's the
gonna-
price
so-
of doing business near a wetland. I mean,
So
this is,
okay, so if you want to flip that even, if, as you say, we're encroaching on the town's property, why wouldn't the town be responsible for delineation?
I think it's two separate issues, though.
Exactly.
But
But I'm just saying.
But I think, and again, I see where you're coming from.
Right.
I do with the property.
Yep.
But with the delineation, I get where maybe, that feels unfair, but I believe that's how it works. I think
It's
if
a
you're,
state law.
if you're coming there,
and you know what? If
you wouldn't
don't
need to
wanna
stake
deal
it,
with
you could just get
void-
it marked for the wetlands, and we can look, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm still a new guy here, but, if it's marked, we can go out and look at it and say, okay, we're far enough away, but otherwise, we're just guessing, we're saying, we don't know.
But essentially, And again, I just don't understand why our point of like, we've been using that property all this time. We've been
Yeah,
using that
but
property.
you gotta look at it from our point, though, it's our job to protect the
And
wetlands.
you know what?
And they do move.
I know you guys are all volunteers. I appreciate, and like I said, I've watched a few. You guys really do care about the environment. But to be quite honest with you, like, there has to be systems in place to protect the homeowner. Like, we can't just make
It's a business out there, correct? Is that business owner
It's a
or is it a
business owner.
home?
It's a business owner, but it's
Okay,
still no
so-
different.
So the point is this, as a businessman, if you make a mistake, whether it be
We
with the
didn't-
building department or whatever, or something comes up, and they need you to address it, are you gonna go back to whatever organization and say, well, I'm sorry, we didn't know that, so it's not our responsibility? We are acting on behalf of the Massachusetts state law. We've been given the authority to ask you to do a delineation. You're telling us your client cannot, or your friend cannot afford it. Then I say we refer it over to DEP because we're not gonna get anywhere.
Or
That's
we
gonna
could just
cost a lot
go,
more.
what's based on Mass Mapper and call it that,
That was gonna be the other thing, yeah.
which I don't think
I mean, and again,
would be a good thing,
my
but
point is there's nothing, so in the
We
definition and the.
can't make that decision and say, let's split the difference and say, we'll move our stuff away 20 feet, because then we'll be wrong. We're not doing our due diligence.
So then it's just a matter of reverse, of going back to the fact that we didn't do anything without permission. Every single time we did something, we asked permission, we came to the board. I mean, when he started his business, he went and did the proper things. Whenever we've had a problem, or not problem, but an issue has come up with this board, 3 times, this is our 3rd time here, as we know. Every single time, we've answered properly in proper times, we've done whatever you've wanted us to do. We were told that we could do this, and now we're being told we can't do this, and it just seems
Because
really unfair.
now we're being told that there has been fill back there.
So-
And you're saying there isn't.
Correct.
But we're being told by members of this board that there has been fill since 2012 or whatever the date is. So
But how
that's,
would they know
You can
that?
see the
Because she
aerial
said-
imagery, if you go into Mass
Yeah.
Mapper.
And you don't want to look at my thing here.
Google
I have
Earth-
all of these.
Google Earth doesn't give you the wetland overlay, okay? So that's why we go to Mass Mapper. If you go to Mass Mapper and you do the address, you can query on wetland delineation, DEP wetland general, and it'll bring up the general. You'll ask for rivers and streams. You can see the overlay from the 1990s all the way up.
I get that, yep.
Okay,
I
well,
don't
that's
have, I
what we
don't have
do.
access to that.
Yes, you do. Everybody can go to
I
Mass
don't-
Mapper and do that.
Yes, no, I
Everybody.
did go to Mass Mapper, and it just was
Yep.
not an easy thing for me to do the overlays,
That's the
and I couldn't
importance
do
of
it.
hiring a professional for it.
Correct. But,
Just, sorry to interrupt everyone.
Yeah.
But seems like we're kind of spinning a little bit.
right.
We are, we're
There's an
spamming.
enforcement order in effect, calls for delineation to be hired, professional to be hired by May 6th, come before the commission May 13th. If that doesn't happen, right below it, it lays out the steps. Right below that, section D lays out how to appeal the decision to Mass
okay,
Superior
so we'll-
Court.
So, yeah, so we'll,
That's
so I guess.
a right they have. If they want to pursue that, they're welcome to do it.
Yes,
Yep.
Otherwise,
yeah,
you guys can feel free, but I would,
yeah.
May 13th, they're supposed to be here with some
And
answers.
honestly, like, some of these photos, and the reason why I went to the photos that I did from a historical perspective, I circled out where the compost pile was and where the wood pile is. And through these photos, you can see that it hasn't moved at all. So if you don't know the property and you look if you're looking through Mass Mapper and you don't know what to look for, what I have in here is what to look for. Those piles have not moved at all. At all. Now, the various business trucks going in and out, that obviously changed for people. And again, we're happy to put signs up and stop people from dumping back there. But delineating and doing all that stuff at a cost to us, we just feel that it's unjust and unfair. That's where we're at.
Well, that's what the enforcement order says, and that's how we can go by it.
I'll make a motion that we continue to May 13th.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, okay. We will see you on the
Copy this that
13th.
shows how to appeal.
I do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda, discussion on House Bill, I can't read these, 1052, Senate 557 legislation.
Nope.
So, Nick, would you like to take it away?
Yes, so
I'll try to be patient.
this bill,
What are we doing? Oh,
It's in your
Next on the
packet.
agenda.
sorry. I'm still writing my notes because I get a scribe, so I'm like, okay.
yeah, that's what I'm changing my stuff around to. The,
13.
just there.
Okay, yep.
So, this is a bill currently in the State House. It's being proposed kind of in mind with projects like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mass Audubon. They do a lot of things like taking in cranberry bogs, damaged riverways, restoring them, getting a functioning wetland back in.
Burge Park is a beautiful example.
Yeah, there's Tidmarsh down in Plymouth's one I love, off of Old Cranberry Bogs. Now it's a few miles of hiking trails with, it's pretty impressive how quickly the wetland creatures and everything like that come back to an area.
It will reclaim.
Yeah, it happens quickly too.
It does.
So they have a bill before, it's recommended by MACC, pretty much to lighten the burden on them when they're going through permitting these projects. Currently, they're filing NOIs with all the same burdens if they were trying to build something. So it's trying to get a streamlined process in for restoration projects. I think one of their particular points of interest was salt marshes. I think they have a lot of difficulty permitting restorations in salt marshes. So the hope is the conservation would like to submit a letter of support, send it in, you know, our couple local, we got John Keenan's our state senator, Allison Sullivan's our, Allison Sullivan Almeida
Yep,
is our state rep.
yep.
And even currently, it's in the Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. I'd send it to the chair of that committee as well. Just kind of voicing our support for the project, help the restoration stuff move forward. I think it's a good bill and kind of a nice thing to do something outside of our normal box, raise the profile a bit,
Sure.
bring attention to conservation and stuff, and, you know, our representatives.
So would you be writing the letter?
I'm happy to, if one of the Concom members would like to write it themselves, that works too. MACC put out some
I'm gonna look to.
some
Liddy,
suggested
'cause
language that we
Lynn's very
could
good at that.
run off of,
Someone can write it, and then I can
play with it from there, and,
red
yeah.
pen, or...
Yeah, and then I can bring it to next meeting, and
Sure.
I'll sign it if we want to do that. and-
So this is just in committee now, it's not,
Yeah, it's in committee right
yeah.
now. So hope is the committee we get some more sponsors on there. They already got a good amount.
Yeah, so if we send it to our representative, maybe she'll jump on those too.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah,
More support, the more momentum it picks
Yeah.
up, and
yeah, I think it's a great
seems like a home
idea.
run, so hopefully they take care of it, but
So between Nick and Lynn, you'll get a letter together before the next meeting?
yeah, I think we can pull that off.
Great.
So moved.
Where did I put my agenda?
RDA checklist.
RDA checklist, okay.
That was
So,
John's project and my project.
John
Oh,
and
I'm sorry, I
Dee,
never wrote back to you, I just seen an email.
I
But I meant
know.
to say it looked good.
I know, that was okay. I kind of figured if I have no news, it's good news.
so for those of you who don't know, or I think everybody knows, you had to fill it out, right?
I did.
We have the ANRAD checklist, we have the NOI checklist, but we didn't have one, or we don't have one for the RDA checklist. And, you know, this one is a little bit easy in some respects. It's not as complex as an NOI, but it still requires things like, hey, you have to advertise, you know, 5 days ahead of time. And I feel like a lot of people who do the RDAs are just like homeowners and they don't know what to do, and it's a little bit you know, hey, file an RDA, what do you mean? And then they go on the website and there's just so much. So I think this would be really helpful for them to have everything laid out. Nick, I didn't throw you under the bus or anything, but you're mentioned several times in there, like, if you need help with this,
Yeah, no,
please
it's,
contact Nick,
Just kind of put it in there.
you know.
yeah, no, the general homeowner trying to do a small project, I'm
Yeah.
Yeah.
happy to help move things like this along.
I mean, if you read the first page, it kind of walks them through and tells them what they're responsible for, but it's like a lot
There's
of,
a little bit more of a description than we would have like with the NOI, the ANRAD checklist, because
Right.
usually the people who are doing that are professionals that
Correct.
know what they're doing.
right.
There's the paragraph towards the end where, of that first page, it talks about this is what a positive determination means.
Right.
This is what negative, because I know we all struggled with that.
I do.
Still kind of do.
I do.
With what that means. But I know we found the checklist to be super helpful in the past when we have somebody come before us, they've got everything laid out. We don't have to say, oh, you forgot this, you forgot this. Oh, let's continue the meeting and get us the stuff. So I'm trying to think.
It's also good because, 5 years down the line, somebody has to pull a file and say, what happened and what did we do? It's pretty well mapped out in here.
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
other-
because we've encountered so much stuff like, 10 years ago, so-and-so did this, and we have nothing in the files, so.
Yeah, it's easy when it's fresh.
It-
The
yeah.
last situation is a prime example of why that's pertinent.
And it's just leaving a paper trail for the future people. who,
Yeah.
If there's a complaint or something went wrong, or like the example, we've had with, in the past with a couple of different things.
But I think importantly, it helps streamline and make things go faster.
Is this for, so take me through the RDA. That's a request for, if,
Determination.
so that's coming in, so let's take I'm coming in, I'm saying, I'm gonna build this garage, do I need to file an NOI?
That's
So-
essentially
And then
what
you
it is.
guys say yay or nay?
Correct.
Yes.
That's
So,
what this is.
without reading through this too much, I would just say, I'd like, personally, I would keep this part this should be very limited as to what the person has to do.
Well, it is. It has
Because
everything
that's
that
a
they
lot of
have
work
to
for a
do.
homeowner to do.
It is, but it's all like the stuff that's required, so it's all laid out.
I get that, but it's required in the NOI. Is
And
this
the RDA.
required just for a RDA?
Yeah. So everything on here, like if you could look at page 3 and 4, 5,
So the reason for an IDA is like the utility pole tonight.
Right.
If they were building a house there, they'd have to file a notice of intent. But just doing a pole, there's no need to go through the whole process of a notice of intent. And a negative determination means there will be no impact on the wetlands by doing that.
Okay.
So we can do an IDA and we can do a negative determination with conditions if we wanted to. So had that been closer to the wetland, say, we might have said, okay, you don't have to file a notice of intent, but we want a hay bale, well, I'm dating myself with hay bale, but, a siltation barrier
Yeah.
before, there. So typically, it's smaller projects, like if you want to build a shed or
Garage
a
addition.
garage,
We're gonna have one
maybe.
next per meeting for garage addition.
Yeah, not something that's right in the, wetlands,
Well, I know there's rules around it,
Yeah.
I just think, this is probably a
it
$10,000.
seems like a lot, but it's,
Thing
it
for a-
lays
for a
it out so
telephone
people
pole.
can go, check, I did this, check, I did that. And
It's more
also,
the money and the complication of going through it that
lot
I
of-
worry about. I'm just looking for it
Yeah.
as a homeowner. I mean, I don't care that Mass
Yeah.
Electric has to
A
pay.
lot of these,
Probably why.
they seem a little wordy, but most of these are available free online.
Okay.
When somebody comes in, I walk them through how to honestly usually end up
Do they have
showing
to
them.
hire an engineer for any of this?
No.
No.
Okay.
And that's the purpose of this.
Yep.
Usually
This
I show
saves
them-
people money.
They
Usually even print it
Yeah.
off
Good.
for them.
A homeowner should be able to do this themselves.
With the, okay.
That's why it's so detail-oriented, so they can kind of like read through it and go, oh.
Okay.
I mean, we do recommend that you do have an engineer stamp, but in here, I wrote,
But you can
Like,
come
if
up
it's-
with
if
the
you
RDA without
can't.
it if you,
right, if you can't, please
Okay.
contact the conservation agent. Just make sure the sketches may be acceptable, but must be to scale. Contact the conservation agent if you need help with this.
Right.
That sort of thing. So we're not expecting them to have, even have an engineer or
Right.
anything like that. But there's a lot to it. And
it's-
it's better to have like everything, here, check this, check this.
Right.
Oh, I got to this form, what the heck does this mean?
and that part I
Oh,
think is really good. I mean, it's nice to be able
Yeah.
to go through and,
And it explains, well, someone will say, oh, I need a plan. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, this spells it out.
Okay.
This would should be on the plan. Oh my God, I don't have an engineer. Okay, if you don't have an engineer, do this.
I mean,
that sort of thing.
So-
going through this and just taking your time and having them go through it and fill it out correctly also, eliminates the fact that we have to postpone it and continue, because we'll
Right.
have all the information up front.
Yeah, and it probably provides a little education too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which probably doesn't.
But, we don't want someone coming and say, hey, and we're like, where's the plan? Or
Yeah.
you're supposed to write up, paragraph or something. It's on the form online, write a narrative of what you want to do, but you didn't give us that or something. And now let's go to the next hearing. Oh, you didn't do this. Now we go to the next. It's all right here. And if they didn't do something, then we can contact them ahead of the meeting and say, hey, we didn't get this. Could you get it in to us by this date so we have a full thing?
Okay.
Otherwise, we're just like looking at it and it's a lot. It seems like a lot,
I think
but
what
it also saves
Chris's
time.
point is that, and this does it, now that I think that, make it easier for the homeowners.
Right.
We don't want the homeowners spending money, meeting after meeting after meeting, bring in an engineer or an attorney in here, because it's not necessary most of the time. I don't want a business doing that if it's not necessary.
Right,
But I think this will make it looks like a lot, but I think it will make it easier for homeowners for smaller projects.
Yeah, I regularly have people looking for something like this. Usually we set up a time. They come in, half hour later. They leave an application filled out. If we have this checklist, we'll be going through it. I'll show them how to get it so they can learn how to get it. I print a copy as I go through it anyways.
Yep.
And their real responsibility is to come back with the filing fee and to go make those copies for the commission. I'll give them one, but I'm not giving them 8 copies. That's pretty much
Right,
where it
yeah.
ends up.
Yeah.
And having something like this does help to kind of show them exactly what we're asking for and why, lay it out, go through it together. And they usually do end up kind of learning quite a bit about it,
Right.
seeing what's around them. Nobody knows where to find a FEMA map just because they bought a house. But they seem to, for the most part, kind of enjoy learning it, understanding more about their property and then.
Anyway, don't have to vote on it because I just handed it out to you guys. I just kind of took it from what Jean and John been working on and added my own stuff to it. So take a look at it and we can, don't like this, add this wording, whatever, and then we can discuss the
Yeah,
next
so I
meeting.
mean, Nick, if you see stuff on there that you think can be eliminated, fine. But it's just that it will help the process go a lot faster.
But there could be issues with wording or, this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah.
Like, why is this written this way? Or this wording could be tightened, or you need to expand on this because I, as a homeowner, don't understand what you're talking about here. Those
Yeah,
are all
that's-
things that, because I want to, my ideal, I should say, is that this is a document we only have to do once, and it works great. And we
Yep.
don't have to go in and go, oh, yeah, we need to change X, Y, and Z. Oh, there's all these misspellings. Oh, this doesn't work. There's always going to be some sort of exception that we come up with that, oh, it could be improved, but I'd like it to be as really good
99%.
as possible, so we don't have to do that. So please feel free,
Yeah.
tear it apart.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're almost going to it. Okay. Discussion on replication areas. So this is something that came up recently, and I've been on the board since 2021. We haven't had that many people have come before us who have wanted to fill in wetlands and then replicate it, right? In order to fill wetlands, you have to replicate it somewhere else. Typically, the people who have done that have properties that are big enough that they have places where they could put those replication areas that doesn't impact their neighbors, their abutters. But we have come to realize that that could be an issue in terms of the placement of that replication area. Because what you're doing with a replication is you're creating a new wetland, right? Our hope is 20 years from now, we're looking at Mass Mapper and we see that replication area pops up as a wetland. That's the hope. Now you have a new buffer, right? what happens if that buffer then extends onto somebody else's property?
That's what happened with, a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Trying not to say
Got
that.
it.
So that's the question, because under the Wetlands Protection Act, under our bylaw, Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and our regulations, it's completely silent about that. You can't deny a project because you don't like the fact that an abutter is gonna have to come before the Conservation Commission, maybe at some point in the future, if they want to do something with their property, when before they wouldn't have even had to have, right? Because you can imagine, you're living your best life, you're like, yay, I want to put an in-law apartment in, I'm not anywhere close to a wetland, and all of a sudden, oh, by the way, yes, you are. Now you have to file with the Conservation Commission, now you have to do an NOI. You may not be able to use part of your property because it's within a no disturb, that sort of thing. So I wanted to have a conversation about that. Is that something that we want to,
Would
do we
this be-
care about it? Do we think that's just the way it is?
I don't think we need a policy for that, and I don't think we should get into it. I think that we take it on a case-by-case basis. I think if we had a policy on it, our hands are going to be tied to that policy, and I just think we're opening up a can of worms.
Were you looking at something like this to add to our bylaw?
I don't know.
I
The
mean,
thing is that if we're looking at a project and we have a new proposal for wetland replication,
Right.
it goes on to an abutter. The
Right,
abutter
no.
finds out and is furious
Right,
with us,
but I'm
and we
saying-
can't deny it for that.
So, I mean, is there a possibility for it to be amended to the bylaws that we have already on the book? I mean, to submit an amendment is not as bad as doing a whole new thing. I
You
mean,
wouldn't do a whole new
I would
thing.
just leave it alone,
No?
unless,
To use Alex's term, I think we are opening a can of worms. I think with the amount of large projects we have going in town, with the amount of replication that's going on, if you move that to another area and you're replicating, even if it's in your own property right now, with the chance of expansion 10 years down the road, you could be deeming somebody else's property unusable. And I think that would put the burden of liability on us.
well, I think that's what she's trying to.
Well, that's what I'm
to
trying to say.
oppose.
yeah,
Because we
but
have a project that's,
You're gonna have more and more people who now have buffers on their property that
Right.
don't have it.
well, and that's why the neighbors can come to the meetings and voice their concern and appeal our decision to DEP too.
But they won't be successful,
Well,
because there's nothing, even if they went to court, I don't think they'd be successful, because the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't say anything about abutters other than you have to notify them that you want to do something on.
But playing devil's advocate, that's why I would agree it probably should be a case to case, but now the homeowner, the guy trying to build on his own land is handicapped because we're making him make a replication, but we're saying you can't put it here in your own land.
yeah, I know, but then the neighbor next door, she's got a buffer in her yard and she
I know,
can't-
but-
Like, what do you do? I mean, is that
so,
fair?
so we're gonna.
You're deeming
say
her
the neighbor
property-
rather than-
Right.
No, no, I'm
undevelopable.
saying
You- somebody's
it must
gonna-
be-
I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
All right,
somebody's
so
getting
why don't we just ask, can we run this by DEP or maybe town council and just get her, I mean, she is a smart.
I don't want to run it by town council unless it's something that we all feel, yeah, we
I get it.
definitely
I mean, if we
should.
deal with it on a case-by-case basis, and we've only run into it once so far,
Sure, but I'm just saying,
I know.
we could not deny a project because
right?
of the placement of the replication area. And
But do we
so-
want to deny the proper use or upgradable use of somebody else's property by our decisions of having them put that replication in another area of their property?
Yeah, I
We
know,
can
this is
always
a
ask them
village.
to, but if they're in a really tight spot, I mean, we can say to them, what you're supposed to be doing is, when you look at the guidelines from DEP, they say, number one, you try to avoid. If you can't avoid, you try to minimize. If you can't minimize, then you try to replicate, right? So the hope would be, okay, you wanted to have this massive, massive thing, maybe make it a bit smaller right? And then, ooh, you can move that replication area so it's not affecting your neighbor. But if somebody came here and said, deny the project because I don't want to have a buffer on my property, we couldn't do that. We couldn't say, sorry, we'd have to be like, well, sorry about that. And we can ask the applicant, can you move it somewhere else? They may say no.
Can we ask MACC what their thoughts are on this? Or is that, the forum that they have?
Yeah,
Has that come up with anybody? I would ask out there first and let's see how that goes.
yeah. But no, I don't want to go and take those steps unless we have, the commission feels
I'm just
like
curious
this is
because,
something we should pursue.
Let's just say my
I mean,
mother's and father's property, okay? They have a wetland beside their property and somebody tried to, back in the day of that notoriously bad man, I can't remember, Mr. Trainer, tried to go in and build houses in there. And it almost happened. If my father hadn't gone to the Conservation Commission here, he didn't get anywhere. He had to go to the state. Because it was gonna happen, and he was gonna end up with a buffer and the whole thing in his yard. So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from, because it almost happened.
So-
And that makes my father's property, I mean, what happens to my father's property?
But at the same time, wetlands move, right?
I
same.
think naturally moving and replicating movement are two completely different things.
Yeah, they
And there
are.
are several projects in this town that we can reflect upon over the last even just 15 years that has been a detriment to the property owner based on the movement.
Based on the replication.
Or replication or no replication, depending on the delineation.
Not to even mention, but we've had a situation where there was a replication on another applicant for a very good developer. I mean, he does excellent work and everything. But when he decided to build a few homes and there was wetlands and he had to do a replication, we went out to visit his property. Jason was out there with me and we're looking there and the applicant just looked at me and he goes, I had no idea how much money this costs and what it does to everything around it and how it has to be looked at and how it has to be monitored. Very expensive. So you really, like Lynn said, the first thing is you want to try to avoid doing replications because in order for them to be successful, this guy put a lot of money into it, a lot of money. I mean,
And if it doesn't work 5 years from now,
And
it's
he-
like, well,
yeah,
nothing you can do about it on our end.
yeah. It's just,
That's why I don't like them at all. Like, I would prefer
you try to avoid it.
to, if someone comes in, can you move it so you don't have to replicate so much? Because it is incredibly expensive, doesn't work. It's like a coin toss about whether it works based on, the studies that have been done about it. But, sometimes you can't, sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I think we should gather more info, because I'm sure we're not the first people to go through it. Figure out
True.
some pros and cons.
True.
I hadn't even thought about it before,
I never did either.
and I never read anything about it,
No.
and
I don't ever remember it coming up in all the years I was on the board before.
But you know what, I mean, because things are getting so tight and people
Yeah.
are trying to use and develop what land there is left in town to their advantage, I mean, we're gonna probably run into this more and more and more. I mean, before it was nice, big open land, farmland, da, da, da. I mean, I go back a long ways, but geez, it might be happening more frequently, who knows? But yeah, let's go on to fact-finding information.
Let's see what some other people are doing in other towns.
okay. All right, building permit site visits, 161 North Quincy Street.
How'd it go,
Anybody
Nick?
attend those?
No.
I did not either.
So 161 North Quincy is proposed friendly 40B. Two buildings.
What exactly is a friendly 40B?
I don't think there's
A friendly 40B is they don't get the state involved to force it on us. Generally, they come before the boards.
All right, so wait, can I ask another question before you go any further? So they don't want to get the state involved because it wants to be a friendly 40B, so it has to go through our planning board and
Zoning
zoning
board.
board. So is zoning going to be working with conservation on this, or is that going to be
zoning wouldn't be working with conservation
No,
on it. It'd be a
just-
separate thing.
They'd still have to
So this-
file like everyone else does.
Well, we've had a situation where we got kind of bypassed in a situation, so I don't want to see us being bypassed as far as our input goes.
So a friendly 40B would need approval from all the different town boards independently. So.
But they're
the 40
voluntarily
They're voluntarily
Okay.
25%.
putting 25% affordable units in here. I think this is 248 off the top of my head.
How many
200
buildings?
248 units between two buildings.
2 buildings?
Yeah, so pretty much the way the 40B would work, they're coming to zoning, asking for waivers. We don't have anything in our zoning bylaw that allows a structure like that. So they're asking for waivers to be able to build it. They're helping us get to our affordable housing cap. Until we hit that 10%, 40Bs to get forced on us can happen.
Right, but that number
if
is a
it-
rolling number, and it'll always be a rolling number. So how close are we to that 10%?
We're at 9, we're close.
I think we are on the close side now.
And if
This would put it
population
Okay,
grows next year,
does,
that won't change.
Does the property on Plymouth Street that, is that going to have any affordable housing in there?
On Plymouth Street.
Yeah.
Behind the senior center,
Yeah.
I believe that had some affordable in there.
That was an approved 40B.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, we have that one in process, so.
So
I'm-
that's already in the
That's
thing.
already calculated
Yes,
in?
yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, we're below our number. If
Okay.
they were to file with the state for a traditional 40B,
They get
the
it.
state would be pushing for it. They might not get the 200, I think 48 units that they're asking for. That number might get whittled down a bit. But most likely they'd get the project through unless there was some real reason they
How
couldn't.
many stories?
I don't know. I think 5's the limit in town. So with the number of units, I would assume they're both 5-story buildings.
I'm just thinking, I
don't know
have
how
seen
else they
that
would fit.
property, I didn't get out there for that walkthrough, but
Yeah.
that seems like a tight property for,
Yeah.
If for a
It
fire
is.
truck or an ambulance to get.
just
in
in
there.
general,
Yeah.
it's just not a,
Captain Cotty was there representing the fire department. He's the fire prevention captain. He's
Was there any
very-
other government, town officials there?
Kevin, who's the deputy town planner, was there. That was it for government
Say what?
officials. They come before the Affordable Housing Trust, the provincial select board. Both have approved of the project in its infancy, the idea of the project, I guess. Where it's at now is there's a 30-day period. They've informed the town that they want to do it. There's, I believe, a 30-day period where the town can offer comment on it.
Who's the developer?
I do not know the name off the top of my head. It wasn't someone I recognized, haven't done anything else in town.
What number is that?
161, it's
161.
right next to the Gables.
Okay, yeah, that's
It's in between the Gables and,
That church.
some
Yeah, it's a church.
Before
land
Dunkin' Donuts.
kind of generally used as open lot storage. It's behind the Borderlands
161,
Garage.
I see it,
It's
yeah.
right beside 267 North Quincy Street.
Yeah, it's in between that and the Gables.
A lot of fire engines on it there. That's something like that.
Yeah, there was one, honestly, fire engine, there was one corner that Cotty was concerned about.
Isn't that like a storage area right now? Isn't that like,
This lot is wooded.
okay.
So where it's going, it's loosely wooded.
You can't buy the storage area, clean that up? No.
The selectmen are working on that.
The,
Oh, that's funny.
so what they,
That's the one the selectmen just revoked the license for.
Yeah, that's ugly over there.
yeah, so what they're presenting initially, I believe an ANRAD was already done. They'd be,
It was.
yeah,
They have it
they'd be
on
building outside of that. I think their parking comes right up to the 100-foot is their general plan,
Really?
but not into. So there probably won't be a lot of conservation
Okay.
part. I believe some of their stormwater they plan on sending out that way, so obviously they'll probably come before us for that and how that process goes.
So they tapping into Brockton for water and storage and everything?
Yes. Yes, that's what they're proposing.
Oh, I only ask because I grew up on North Quincy Street. That's
Yeah, we
what I
don't have anything over there, so,
Yeah.
I guess they're,
The Gables are tied into Brown.
yeah, and
My
that's,
grandpa- I mean, that was my godfather's property.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they're proposing as well, is tying into Brockton. They've already talked to them over there.
Still counts against us.
Yep. It does.
Yeah, I think Abington tried to get Brockton to issue new sewer for this, and
Yeah.
Brockton said, no, we'll use the sewer you have, and then we'll
Right.
go from there.
Okay, so they're going before zoning first, or is that planning?
Zoning would be their first application.
So zoning?
So 248 units, you said?
I believe so.
49,
Is it 249?
49 rental units, yeah.
Okay,
62 designated as affordable.
yes.
So they're gonna be using about 60,000 gallons of sewer a day, probably.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like them cutting down trees or doing anything to the environment on our side, now, them being a 40B, would they get a waiver for doing that, or would we be able to have any input
No,
on
they
that?
still have to adhere to our regulations.
No, they don't.
Oh, 40B?
40B, because they could get around
They go
it.
to state.
This is a
They have to
friend,
go
this,
state law, they don't have to.
So, but is that being a friendly, would they not involve the state if we, say like if we went and said, no,
They
you gotta
wouldn't have to
replant
give us
trees,
setbacks.
you can't build here, you gotta do
Yeah.
that, would they take that and make it an unfriendly
Because if
40B
it
and go to the
was,
state?
then.
yeah, so the purpose of the friendly part of it is
We work with them.
they're trying to go through with the approvals. You know, maybe it's something like, can we move this building here, things like that, you work with them. It's supposed to be friendly. You know, it's called that for a reason, so, you know, it might be something where if our tree regs made it tough for them, that would waive some of it to make it easier for them to get in there, knowing that if it did go through as a traditional 40B, it's kind of, you know, the honey or the stick kind of situation. You know, if there's 12 trees we're worried about, might be something we recommend waiving, because otherwise all of a sudden they could just add a third building if they went through traditional.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that happened with a different property with a 40B, is by the time it got to us, it was basically rubber stamp it, it's all you got, we're not going back, and we're not changing anything.
Exactly.
And that, I don't want it to be in that position where,
No.
And that's why some residents sometimes should look at the big picture, because the town loses control, and Summer Street is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, currently we're at the friendly stage where it will be, you know, go through everyone else, including this commission, assuming that I assume they're gonna at least send the water in there, so it'll need to come through, but
So these 62 affordable units were going to put us right at 10%?
I don't know exactly where that would put our number.
But I,
But then
last
if the
I-
population jumps next year,
Well, you know, it's gonna jump because
It
when
is
they
gonna-
start filling up
it
the
is
other.
gonna-
funds.
I
You're
think
never
I
gonna
heard
get that 10%.
that
Never
it
get it.
would get us maybe to the 10 for a year and a half.
But even at that, though, the extra people that are coming in, it's a small amount compared to 16,000 residents, you know?
But I think you're always gonna have, with population growth, you're always
But
gonna
you're
have.
never
this could put us at 12%, who knows?
You know,
And then that works for quite
Yeah,
a
it's-
few years.
I mean, I know
Progress
this-
towards it.
This isn't our responsibility, but the 40B law was written in 1969, which was 56 years ago. And they only had them require 20 to 25%. That law needs to be brought up to speed so that it's not putting the towns in a position where we're always chasing, you know what I mean? I mean, 25% for housing 55 years ago, when we know that the population has increased so much, it really should go to like 30% or 35%.
The housing costs are so high.
I know, but.
Yeah, and that's kind of the importance of affordable housing.
But I
And the
mean,
lands are getting smaller.
Yeah, so
We're
I
not
mean-
growing anymore.
yeah, there's not much more places we can build.
I think the bigger issue is that we're usually the last ones on the list to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that friendly is long gone by the time they sit before us,
It's
so.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's, and then we can't, you know, there's
We
the
have-
pressure of, okay, we're gonna deny you.
Right.
And then, because we don't like the fact that you're 75 feet into the wetlands or something, buffer.
And everybody
just
else has
say-
already pushed their buttons for the last 6
Right.
months, so.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly what happened on the last one.
Mhm. And yet we
then-
still tried to work.
And we did. We tried, and, you know, the townspeople were very upset. So many eyes on that project. But my hands were tied.
We got some tiny, tiny little bone they threw us.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
No.
Nope.
About that? Okay. Moving on, complaints, 1027 Washington Street.
Where's that?
That's Beaverbrook Playground.
What happened?
That's right.
AJ was out there with his kid, noticed some of the erosion control around the river there started to kind of fail.
Okay.
Not a full failure that anything's blowing through, but it definitely needs to be repaired. And that I plan to talk to John Stone about it. I'm
Okay.
fairly confident he'll go out and take care of it. At one point, there was a little retaining along there. I think probably a permanent solution would just be to repair that, so then you don't have to worry about replacing silt sock over and over again. But I don't know what they have budget-wise, what they can swing, but get it cleaned up and move on from it.
And 181 Brockton Ave, what is that?
181 Brockton Ave, I guess an easy landmark is Mal's Kitchen.
Yeah, you know what the batting cage?
Oh, yes, yeah, you mentioned that to me, yeah.
Yeah, so a couple stockpiles there. They've been using it for a long time stockpiling.
And you took care of that, yeah.
Spoke to representative from the property about tarping anything that could be blown and putting some erosion control along the upper edge. It is very,
in the buffer?
it's been used a long time. I don't know exactly where the delineation is. There's pretty much a millings kind of paved area, not paved, but millings down. Been there a long time. And then there's a stone wall, and it appears wet just beyond the stone wall. It is slightly upgrade to the wetland area. It kind of goes up to that wall and then goes back down. So they told me they put up some kind of erosion control along the back end of their stockpiling to prevent anything if there was a real bad storm from flowing uphill at it.
Okay, good. 185 Walnut.
So 185 Walnut, took a bit, got in touch with them. He has moved the equipment, everything out of there, understands the equipment can't be. There was some topsoil that had been dumped on millings that he put down, that he moved out into his yard. So now it is kind of still milled area. I know Gene had more history there than I had.
I did, I was out there 2 years ago. Paul sent me out there because somebody had called in with a complaint about work being done next to the river. So I had gone out there and I pulled over the side of the road, there was the river on the other side of the stone wall. The stone wall is one side's his property. And so I took some pictures and I walked up to the house and there was some gentlemen sitting outside and I talked to them and they invited me in and the homeowner was there and they're from the North Shore. He has a pavement company and he wanted to put them in the yard and I said, well, you've got a river over here that has a 200-foot riverfront protection, so you really can't be putting, blacktop and parking in here. And I said, as far as the rest of it goes, you're in an R30 zone, you might need to check with building department, check with zoning, and check with planning. I said, because I don't know their responsibilities or anything, but I think it would just be wise for you, because he said, did my neighbor complain? I said, I don't know who called. I just was asked to come out. So, then in 2024, Paul had mentioned it in the February 2024 meeting that there were issues continuing there and that Tony was supposed to reach out, and I don't know what happened, it kind of fell by the wayside. And then this year I got a call from somebody who lives on Summer Street, wanted to know what was going on, so I said, I don't know, I'll find out, and that's when I contacted you.
Yeah, so for time being, he pulled all the equipment out of there, made it clear it can't be in there. I don't know if we want to do anything beyond that or monitor it, how we want to handle it.
Monitor it.
I think
For
I
the
just
time
probably
being.
want to go back and look at the aerials from Mass Mapper, just to see what's been done. And then just keep an eye on it, yeah.
Just keep an eye on it, you've been out there, so you know
Yep.
what to look for, so.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
the parking did expand though, closer to the river, so that's why I'm saying he might have to pull some of that
The
out. But
parking or did the parking lot
the
expand?
parking, he had millings in there. Was it blacktop when you were there?
It wasn't, there's a blacktop drive that comes in
Right,
from
so
the
that
road
was- then to
and then
the-
kind of does a tight circle and comes back out around, there's a little tree there he said he liked, so he didn't want to pave over it.
See, that wasn't there when I was there originally in 2022. 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, no, the blacktop around the tree, that wasn't there when I was there, when Paul asked me to go out. I'll look on Mass Mapper. and I'll-
Yeah, it goes about the depth of the house, and then off to the left, it's millings that are down that kind of lead to what's clearly wet. So when I first showed up, there was a trailer, Bobcat, truck, all parked on those millings, directly adjacent to the wetland. That's what I told him to remove
Yeah.
immediately.
So good, so if he's
Seems to
gonna
have
pull it-
jumped on that.
If he's gonna pull that out, then that's good, because that was the only thing I saw, but I didn't see the other.
I didn't tell him to remove the millings.
Oh.
I told him to remove the equipment from there.
All right. Keep an eye on him, so.
Did we ever settle the other issue on Walnut Street?
No, they have an enforcement order, and they're supposed to be doing a delineation down the other, further down Walnut Street. Should have it, that's the one, the solar.
Didn't they
array.
lose their,
solar
like, their
array, yeah.
email change or something
Yeah,
strange? Or,
something.
there's a little language barrier there, but I just
Yeah.
didn't know if that was still a pending issue or not.
Yeah, there is, there's an enforcement order, and they're supposed to do a delineation.
Yeah.
Should be in your cart.
Could we get, for the next meeting, I know we told a bunch of people to come in this spring. Could we get a list of them?
Yeah.
You have that? Yeah.
A spreadsheet.
And the dates that they're supposed to be in?
So we're gonna have a lot
Yeah,
of,
no, it's a good. Like, there's also a property on Linwood Street. I think it was 1 Linwood Street or 10 Linwood Street. Do you remember that? A long time ago.
Yeah, you, me, and
A
Paul.
little home. and
Yeah.
We got the complaint,
Yeah.
and then we said, all you have to do is fix this little area, plant a couple trees and stuff, and I think we've just spaced it out. It's
Yeah.
been 2 years.
Where was that?
It's,
I don't know how the numbers run there.
Isn't it closer to Mill Street?
it's closer to Mill Street, yeah.
Yeah, the Brockton end's number 1.
The lower, right?
Yeah.
So it's just an area they had, or Paul had visited there, he had a complaint, and he had visited, and there was this, it's not even like a wetland, it's actually marked as a marsh
Yeah.
on Mass Mapper. And he explained to them, no, you can't do that, and then we went for a visit, and we talked to, was it the friend
Oh, yeah,
or a
yeah.
relative
A relative came to translate.
to translate,
Yeah.
and they were very, very nice, and,
Right.
but stuff like that, that I
Yeah.
completely have spaced out.
So they
it'd be
have
good to
beautiful
get a
manicured lawns,
list.
but when you looked in the marsh area, all the lawn clippings were. It's like,
I'll send that to you.
Okay, great.
all right, correspondence?
Correspondence. 0
So-
Summer Street.
0 Summer Street, I think 2 more reports since last meeting. The, these ones seem to be cleaner than the ones we were getting before. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look through, if you have anything.
It didn't seem like there was much.
I saw that she said she made some recommendations that they need to beef up their post-storm, recommended to bolster erosion controls with hay bales, not hay, but straw bales would be better. In addition, location where puddling was noted, yeah. Can do it for security cameras being run within 50 feet of wetland area was reportedly approved by Concom.
That was something that came to me about, I talked with Lynn about it. It's just a cord running to an independent trailer that has a camera on it. They're required to have it for both their insurance, and our police department wants them to have it on site. Now that they have equipment, structures up,
Okay.
it's motion, so if anyone comes through the fence, jumps over the fence, whether it be someone looking for theft or a kid messing around, it's a dangerous site, they want to
is
know
a
about it
dangerous site.
immediately. So they want, like, the cameras are on the 4 different corners.
Yep.
Obviously, 2 of those corners are in the wetland area, or not wetland, the buffer area.
Well, it's nice to see there aren't as many violations as there were last couple of times.
Yeah, we're getting closer to any kind of digging being done on the site too. I believe they have 1 more utility to run, an electric line, that'll kind of be in that area. Foundations are all dug and backfilled. Pretty soon they'll be paving the whole parking lot, everything like that, and then I believe they'll be mostly sticking to the paved area.
Just a
Which will
quick
be
question, on
nice.
the last time that there was, on the reports, there was a report of some sort of machinery running all night long with an extension cord down the sidewalk. What did that end up being? Did anybody know?
It's a pump, a generator.
There was a generator.
They had a
Who was running-
generator.
What were they running and what were they pumping it to? I don't know. Was they pumping out?
I think it was just power for the site.
No, they said they were pumping, didn't they?
Yeah.
Pumping
It was-
water?
Water was being pumped.
I
Okay.
just didn't know if we got an answer from them on that.
I'm not sure if we did either. I know now the detention basins is where all the water's going on site. I don't know what it was at that time.
Okay. All right, sewer manhole rehabilitation.
John Stone?
Yeah, just a project. They're doing all the, redoing that. There's just a letter about that. And so it's kind of a courtesy letter to us, same as with the National Grid utility maintenance that they'll be doing on the transmission lines.
All right.
That's it.
Very good.
Can I get a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous.